All right, welcome to episode 001 of On the Fritz. And we are here today with Julia Lucidi, the founder of the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup and the Founder Tactics podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. I'd love if you could give us a brief intro.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be your first guest.
Thank you.
And so my name is Julia Lucidi. An honor to be here and to be joining this conversation. I am the founder of the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup, and like you mentioned, also the Founder Tactics podcast. My focus is on community building for the founder entrepreneurship community. The event is focused on tech, and the podcast is focused on founders as a whole. So we also interview folks that aren't tech related. So that's what I've been doing for the past 3 years.
Awesome. So glad to hear it. And it's been so fun to be a part of your community that you've built. And I think that's what I really want to hone in on today is, On the Fritz podcast is a focus on when things are broken, right? That's a saying it's on the Fritz. It's not working. So there was something that you saw that wasn't working, whether it was for you or for the community. And you said, I can fix this. And I'd love to dive into that. What was the thing you saw that you were like, this is on the Fritz and I want to fix it?
That's good. I love the premise of the podcast, and the focus or the issue that I saw, what I saw that was broken was the lack of a strong tech community in Broward County. So I've been in Miami since 2017. I moved from Brazil. I was living in Rio at the time when I moved to South Florida, and started working with the tech community a couple years in, and was driving to Miami for just about everything, crossing the border and doing, a lot of driving to be able to connect and do business with people. And whenever I started my company, I honestly didn't know what I was going to do, first of all, but I just knew that I needed to take this step. And one of the first things that I noticed and that I just really wanted to solve was being able to do business locally and being able to connect specifically with the startup community locally. And I knew that there was a big opportunity because I started going to different co-working spaces because I enjoy being in co-working spaces. I enjoy being with other people, hearing their ideas, making friends. And I visited a couple of co-working spaces. The Levan Center was one of them. I went to General Provision in downtown Fort Lauderdale. I went to Spaces Industrious, Axis. I drove up to 1909. And I also started mentoring with a venture mentoring team. And I noticed that a lot of their mentors and founders that they were mentoring were also in Broward or even Palm Beach County. And so that's when I started to see that, man, it's not just me, and there really is an opportunity for us to congregate and be together here in Broward County.
Yeah, the disjointedness of these communities is incredible when you think about a different city and how segregated almost, it is between the three counties and how hard it is to not only commute between them, but to interact between them. And so just like yourself, I've been driving backwards and forwards, taking the Bright Line, going, trains, planes, and automobiles between everything. And so what was that first step you took to be I don't want to do this way anymore, and I need to change it for myself? And then you saw there was attraction with a community of people.
Yeah, it's interesting because whenever I used to work at the Cambridge Innovation Center, and we had an amazing co-working space in the Alapata, borderline Wynwood area. And whenever they shut down, that's when I decided that I was going to start my company. And like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was a little burnt out, to be honest, because I had been doing a lot of building within CIC, and I needed a break. So for about 3 months, I didn't take one meeting. I didn't want to talk about anything tech. I completely disconnected. And then it was around November that I had already started going to the co-working spaces and kind of slowly networking and the wheels turning, that I was, kind of throwing this idea out to people and seeing what they thought and seeing if they would go, if they would attend, if they would support. And I got a lot of yeses. I got a lot of founders saying yes, mentors, investors, local leaders in the tech community saying that they thought it was a cool idea. People that were close to my network. And I remember that Christmas, it was Christmas, everything was slowing down, except for me. I was firing on all cylinders, me and my husband had gone to dinner in Fort Lauderdale, and I had just opened Google Maps to kind of see what bars were around, because I wanted to find like a cool venue. I wanted to find a venue that when people came, they were kind of like discovering another corner of Fort Lauderdale, that it was worth it to them, even from the aspect of like discovering more of the city and connecting with cool people. And that's when the Fitz bar pulled up, owned by John Fitzgerald.
Not Fritz, not me.
Not Fritz. And I went in and I talked to the owner and pitched him on this idea. And he was super open to it. He thought it was interesting. And of course, he didn't know at all who I was or what it would look like to build a tech community in Fort Lauderdale. But he's an entrepreneur. He owns a spot. He was excited to have more people coming into his space. And so I just asked him, like, what's your slow night? And he said, well, Monday's pretty slow. Like, I think that would be a good night for us to host you. And I told him, I think maybe on the first night we might get like 5, 10, maybe max 15 people. I think in a year we'll get to 100. And he was like, oh, wow, that would be really
Lofty
cool.
goals. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, that would be really cool. And I asked him, what's a good night for you? He's like, about 45 people is a pretty solid night. And I was like, okay, so we're going to do it on a Monday. It's not like they closed it exclusively to us. We were going to have like a corner in the back, which looking back is hilarious. I posted, I think January 3rd. Like I waited for the holidays to pass. But I was like itching, like everything was ready. I had gotten the Instagram page. I created like stickers, a logo, and started promoting it. And I did send it to like a couple of newsletters. Like I sent it to Refresh Miami. I think they posted it on their website, and it was hosted on Eventbrite, like the registration at the time. And to be honest, like I can't take personal credit for the kind of traction that we got immediately, because we had 350 people register for the tech meetup.
Wow.
Coming along those 2-3 weeks that we promoted it. And it was just such an overwhelming response. And I will tell you, like, this isn't what I thought I was going to do for my business. Like it's, and I had shared this with you before. Like I thought about doing consulting or like trying to figure out like, okay, what does my company do? Like trying to figure out what was going to be my service or my product. And so, that overwhelming response of the community of 350 people registering for this event, and it just kind of like going viral within our Broward community, it was just such a strong sign that this was like almost like a prompt in that direction. And I'll tell you, like it was not only the registrations, but the night of the meetup, I just remember really feeling the power of God's hand, because, as an entrepreneur, we do, our work, we do our part, but there's a lot that is out of our control. And a lot of people like ask me like, oh man, how do you get so many people attending your events? How have you been able to so consistently? How have you been able to, from the start? And yes, like I give it my best. I do it. I honestly try to work and give an incredible experience for the people who attend our events, but I do see like God's hand of blessing over my work. And I feel just incredibly blessed for that. And I think especially in the beginning, I think I still resisted that would be the company. Like I was still trying to really push into different directions, but it just continued growing and growing and growing to the point that I was like, you know what? Let me focus 100% on this and really make this what I'm going to double down on. So the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup essentially became like the product of my company.
It sounds like it was a lot of green flags, but even then you were like hesitant to listen to them. And I want to dive into that too, because that's interesting. And, I remember in the very early stages, you wanted to stick out as not another happy hour. Everything was a happy hour. It was all around, maybe not necessarily drinking, but socializing, and not so much as building the community. And so what were some of those early green signs where you were like, okay, I cannot ignore this? Like, Give me like a really good example of like you were like, this is too big to ignore.
Well, definitely the number of people that were attending, right? So we started with 120 people in attendance. It's a free event. I remember calling John from the bar and telling him, like, you need to remove all of the furniture from the bar because it needs to be standing room only. The bar's capacity was 85 people.
Oh my
And
God.
so I think our largest event at the Fitz was when Tesla sponsored and they brought out 2 cars.
That's
And
sick.
yeah, it was awesome. It was like a little block party almost. Like we had people spilling out into the street. And so it was very much so like beyond capacity from the start. So I think that was a really strong signal that I couldn't ignore. And the second tech meetup was when I introduced our directory app. So, when you get to the tech meetup, you can scan a QR code, add your profile, and see who is coming into the room. At the second meetup, we introduced that. And what we were doing at the time is we were doing co-working membership giveaways, general provision sponsored for the first month. For the first year. And they would give away 3 co-working memberships, and then people would sign up in hopes to win a co-working membership and also to be able to see who else was in the room. And so we started to gather a lot of data. And another green flag was that 60% of the people in the room were C-level executives and founders, 30% were directors or senior management. That was another like green flag of like, man, there's a lot of like quality people coming into the room. And like you said, we did start as a happy hour, but I always wanted to evolve it beyond that because I have been working with entrepreneurs for 15 years and creating content, doing workshops, doing, live fireside chats, educational curriculums, working with sponsors. Like I knew that was a direction that I was fully capable of taking it into. And I started searching for like different venues, but it took me, I couldn't find one, to be honest, that matched what I was looking for to take it like into the next stage until they came to us. So the Flow Building Management came to the tech meetup and said, hey, we would love for you to bring this into our space, into our building. And I was like, well, I'll come check it out. I went to go check it out and it was gorgeous. It was just perfect for us. We had 3 times the space in the restaurant. We had an outdoor stage covered, and that was another green flag of like, okay, now it's time to like mature it into this space where we're going to be having more intentional dialogue about the building in tech, investing in tech, and all those things.
Yeah, I remember, my first time coming out to the event at the Fitz and then my first time coming out to the Flow and being like, this is a huge, huge upgrade. And so you took it through these different stages and you walked, this very diligently and delicately, I would say. And so what was like, the stars really aligned for them coming to you and presenting you with the opportunity. What was one of the times when you had to go and just like grab the opportunity?
Like when I had to reach out for it and like, oh, well, I have a perfect example, reaching out to EisnerAmper. You know what I mean? So we needed to get sponsors on board because for the first year and a half, we didn't charge for the tech meetup. So everything was coming out of my pocket. And we needed sponsors to make this sustainable. And I had been capturing a lot of data about who was in the room through that directory, which was fundamental. Like to anybody who's doing community building, you have to know who's in the room. And whenever I actually attended the Florida Venture Forum, and I went to all the different tables and I was speaking to the sponsors, telling them, hey, like I'm the founder of the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup, would love to work with you. This is what we're doing. And EisnerAmper just like opened the doors. I connected first with Lynn, and Lynn was like, I think you should speak to Jonathan Lowe. And I connected with Jonathan. Jonathan like took the time for us to connect, to really get to know my story. He was super interested and genuine in seeing how we could work together. And it ended up, turning into a sponsorship, but then it was, our relationship continued to build beyond that. And as we stayed in touch, EisnerAmper then, said, okay, like, let's look at this again, and sponsored a couple of times. And it's just kind of like really evolved into a really great partnership. And I always feel like EisnerAmper is an extension of my team because my team's so small. And so it's just awesome to be able to say that I, went after those sponsorship relationships and was able to land something like EisnerAmper. That was a huge success for me personally.
That's awesome. And just to understand how that snowball effect was really built around a genuine relationship between yourself and a large corporate entity, and how, and coming to my mind now, it's like how smart to just go and talk to all the people who are already spending money in the space where you want to receive it, right? Mm-hmm. You went, table to table where these folks are doing marketing efforts, spending money in the area that you're promoting, and building value. And another thing I want to circle back to, which on the value piece, which was that directory that you built out on day 2 almost of the meetup. Like, I think that to me was probably the key in building the community and building the feedback loop, because everyone was going to events, everyone's getting business cards, everyone's connecting on LinkedIn and then forgetting that ever happened, right? And so you had a way to say, this is who you met, this is who you wanted to meet, and here's all the details you need to reconnect. Like, how did you have the foresight to do that?
I was talking to a friend that's like an amazing marketer. She actually helped me develop the podcast name Founder Tactics, which ended up being kind of the umbrella name for my company. Like, all the products are under Founder Tactics LLC. And she was just like, I think that you could create something that's exclusive, that's only for people who are in the room. Mm-hmm. So it was really through like this brainstorming idea. And then I, was introduced to like a low code programmer guy, and he did it for like a super fair price. Mm-hmm. Actually, my first one, I didn't pay for it at all. It was like, there were some limitations with the freemium, which like after like 2 years, I had to make a shift and actually had some expenses with it. But in the beginning, it was my friend that put it together for me. I'm like remembering it as we're talking about it.
Yeah, no worries.
So his name's Sardar, and I met him at CIC. He was one of our clients, and he just said like, I want to help. Mm-hmm. And he's like all the way out in France. And so remotely, he helped me put together the directory.
That's such a cool piece of the product, if you will. And I want to hop into the next piece, which was like you developed the podcast platform, and you've had incredible guests on stage, and you've went the extra step to then record that, go through the full production process, and then produce that content into both long, short form, YouTube, Instagram, across Spotify, everywhere, right? All the places where you can catch on the Fritz. And yes. And so tell me a little bit more about that. Like, I know there's people building not only, media companies and content creation around their own companies, regardless of what space they're in, but also building this community. So first I want to talk about, that content creation piece, how you recognize that was like a crucial part of it all, and kind of what the rewards have been from that.
Yeah. So at first, the Founder Tactics podcast was separate from the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup. And it was just like too much work, to be honest, for me to like do both. And I just thought, how can I just merge these? How it's synergistic. Mm-hmm. It's not like they have to live separate. So I essentially just put the podcast on the on the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup stage. Like, if we're already having these conversations on stage, why don't we just do it in a podcast format where we can then record it and make this information like perpetual and allow people who aren't in the room to have access to it. So there was that decision, right, of like kind of aligning the strategy of the brands. And so that has been great because it allows for, I think what are the benefits? People find out about the Tech Meetup through the podcast. People who are interested in coming to the Tech Meetup and maybe they're still a little bit hesitant and they want to know a little bit more about what we're talking about, they can tune in prior. Mm-hmm. So it really allows for your community to get to know you before they even step in the door. So I think that content creation is really important from that perspective. And another driver is just like, I love podcasting. Like,
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I've been talking about doing a podcast since I was working at CIC. I used to tell my boss, Brooke, all the time, like, oh, we should start a podcast. I want to do a podcast. So when I told her I was starting a podcast, she was like, duh, like,
Obviously.
of course. Yeah. But I just love talking to a microphone. I love having conversations, talking about life, going deep, talking about, the founder journey. These are things just I enjoy doing. Like, it's just natural for me. It's not something that I'm like, oh, we should really podcast because that's what everybody's doing. And I just feel like there are some people that just podcast because they kind of feel like they have to create content. But if that's your case, like, find somebody on your team that loves podcasting. Don't do it just because you're the executive director or the president or the CEO. Like, find somebody in your company that loves podcasting and put them to do it, because I can tell when I'm listening to a podcast and the person is like a little bit stiff, or you can tell they're like kind of uncomfortable. It's like, put the kid that loves it. Like,
they're being told, they're following an agenda and a script, and they're like they're being told what to do sometimes.
They're like, laugh now.
Yeah, holding up the sign, laugh.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's pretty cringy to watch. And you see it now because I work with a lot of startups and I'm heavily embedded in the startup space.
Yeah.
There's these startups that are like, well, we have to have content. Yes and no. Don't force it. Create it, genuinely. But there's like, you see them doing these street interviews now, and they're like in New York, and they're on the street, and they're basically just selling. It's like, I don't want to watch this. Nobody wants to watch this. It's like they're filling an empty space that no one's looking for.
So you bring up a really important point that I was just thinking about talking to you about on this podcast, which was, whenever I started the meetup, one thing that a lot of people would ask me was, what's the end game? Like, why are you doing this? What's the end game? And it was like a little bit frustrating to me, because I'm like, why does there have to be an end game? Like, what if I just want to build community and do it sustainably for myself, like as a company? People are always like asking like, oh, so when are you going to launch product? When are you going to launch something you're going to sell to the community? And I don't. Like, there's nothing I'm selling to the community beyond like general admission tickets, which, is just a symbolic contribution. But it's, it was just something that always kind of like I got the question a lot, like, what's the end game? What are you trying to get out of this? Like, it was just like, what's your true intention? Like, I felt like that's what people were kind of asking. And I was like, I want to build community. And the thing is, like, having worked with tech community building in Brazil prior to moving to the States, when I first heard about like the whole like scale up model, like how you like support entrepreneurs, and then like through media you can inspire entrepreneurs, people to become entrepreneurs, I was like, this kind of sounds like a fairy tale. Are you sure like this is how it works? Like, it just seems like a little bit like idealistic. And then when I worked in Brazil for 6 years, and I worked in different organizations that supported founders, and I saw it work, I'm like, oh, wow, like, this is incredible. Like, yes, content, podcasting, events, like all these things really do promote and strengthen the tech community. And so whenever I came to South Florida and I was starting to do, my own company and building and doing community building for the tech ecosystem, I feel like some people didn't get it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm doing community building. Like, that is the purpose,
This is the end goal.
Exactly.
It's like the people that are always so, focused on selling and buying. They're like, when are you going to release your course? Are you like, you're building this up to sell us something, you're fattening us up for the kill.
Yeah.
Right. And it's never that case, especially with you and how you genuinely care to interact with people. And I think that's why, we get along so well, is because we're both on that same exact mindset and path.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like we see eye to eye on that. And I appreciate that.
That's cool. Yeah.
Everyone does. And we're going to always bring it back to the ecosystem, because I think that if someone's listening to this episode, what I want them to get out of this is kind of how and why and you built what you built. And so I'm imagining that they're also looking to maybe start a community or gather a community in a place that's underserved, ignored, underfunded, what would be, I'd love to hear, what would be some of your recommendations to people listening? Like, I would love to build this too, where I live. Like, this is awesome.
So the first thing is like success is not measured by how many people show up. Like, don't think like I have to get 100 people in the room for it to be a success. Because honestly, when I started, it was going to be a success if 5 people were in the room. If I had one buddy there with me at the bar, like I literally called my friend, Matias, who he now is back in Chile. And I told him, hey, he's a founder. And I just told him, hey, I'm doing this. Will you come? And like worst case, we'll just have a beer at the bar. And he was like, yeah,
Best
of course.
Case.
Yeah. And like that was the whole purpose, was to create a space where entrepreneurs can get together and like, you know, be like, dang, it's been a tough week. Like, or like, oh, I closed a deal. I'm so happy. And just like share in like a moment of like, you know, friendship and support because we are, you know, lonely so much of the time. And so that alone would have been a success. And, you know, I would have hoped to grow it, of course. But so I just like to encourage people to say, like, even if you start with a handful of people, like that is already successful. And what's going to make it grow is you being consistent. So when I started the Tech Meetup, I published 3 dates. I published January, February, March. So whenever you signed up for it on Eventbrite, you saw that we had 3 dates because I wanted people to know that this wasn't a one-time thing. And we've now hosted 35 editions to date. So we kept going.
That's incredible. 35 editions today. And, you know, there was, I want to think about what you said there for a second. It's the beauty of podcasting because we can just cut this.
Or not.
or yeah, leave it in. It's lost me now.
So whenever I lose my train of thought, I take 3 deep breaths and I swear it like almost always comes back to me. Sometimes it happens to me when I'm on stage.
Oh, it should.
Interviewing people. And I like, as the guest is like answering, I'm like, okay, the time is counting down to when I have to remember what I was going to say.
No, I was talking about like the success of the metrics, right? And how they don't matter. And when I make like a stupid meme and I post it and one person likes it, I'm like, success, we did it. One person thought that was funny.
Yeah.
That for me was like, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing this. And I built some stupid accounting meme page to 15,000 people looking at my memes and laughing every day. And I was like, that happened out of nowhere. But it was just because of that mentality of it's like, I just want one person, even if it's me, I'll be the first like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll go like it on my other, 3 accounts and say, yeah, success. It was a great day.
My dog liked it.
Oh, 100%. Presley the Husky, big like. Who doesn't have a dog Instagram now? Yeah, but then, coming back to that ecosystem building, what else was there that you needed to do to make sure that the consistency was there, the value was there, and you could maintain, a group of people that wanted to show up?
I mean, I think in great part, once we started doing content, was being able to bring in really high quality speakers. That's not easy work. You know what I mean? Like, you have to find these people, be able to get on their agenda, sell them on your vision, and get them to sometimes come up to Fort Lauderdale or drive down to Fort Lauderdale. And that's like a huge challenge. And I think that, of course, like I have like a good network, a good, good relationships that I can reach out to. But, for folks that are looking to build in the space and maybe do more content, networking is really important. It's important for you to be out, for you to be supporting people, for people to know who you are, so that when you do reach out and, are asking for somebody to come on your podcast or come speak at your event, that there's more like, I forget what the word is, but like relational capital there. So I think that's been really important. I'm always really pushing it to see like how high level of speakers we can get.
Well, I think you've done a great job of that. And I agree where it's like the more relationships that you can build meaningfully, the better your network is. And the more times the stars are going to align, especially with that scheduling and logistics thing.
Yes.
It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And,
brain fart.
It's gonna happen more often than not.
I'll share some of the cool speakers that we've had while you think
I'd
about
love to. No,
what you were gonna say. So last month we had Eric Aronson, senior analyst, lawyer, senior analyst, senior.
He does the due diligence, I think, for Mark Cuban.
I forgot the title for Mark Cuban companies. We had Anya Freeman, the founder of Kind Designs. She's amazing. She's like a superstar here in South Florida, does 3D printed seawalls. She was invested by Mark Cuban companies as well. We've had Stephen Walborough, the co-founder of Halborn blockchain cybersecurity company. They raised $90 million in 2022. We've had Endeavor entrepreneur and also Endeavor mentor Carlos Diaz. He was the founder of Entic, a prop tech company. We've had Kathy Chu from Deep Work Capital. We've had the EisnerAmper team, of course. Those are a couple like top of mind folks.
And how did you find yourself either in those circles or like into those conversations where you were like, oh, I'd love to have you come out, and they were instantly, yeah, let's do this?
Well, Eric Aronson attended the Tech Meetup, and I saw his email in our guest list. And I believe I met him in person, but honestly, I meet so many people. It's literally been 5,000 people in 3 years that it's hard sometimes for me to like fully click everyone. But I do remember seeing his email in our like registration list, and I was like, whoa, that's awesome. And so I just emailed him and said, hey, thank you so much for attending. Like, I'd love to have you come to the Tech Meetup sometime to speak. And he was super receptive. We had a call just to get to know each other. And he was living in New York at the time. I actually didn't realize that because he had spent some time in South Florida and then moved to New York. And so it took quite some time for us to be able to align our schedules, but he was always super responsive, always like, oh, sorry, I can't do this month, but maybe next month, maybe in a couple of months. And we ended up landing an interview here with him at the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup. And I think it's just like persistence, like if they're open, if they're receptive, they're answering and, still showing interest, then why not continue trying to schedule it? I mean, I think it's super worth it. And his session, which will be published on the Founder Tactics podcast soon, his interview was one of like the most, I got the best feedback from our community. They said it was one of the best editions of the Tech Meetup that they had been to.
I'm so glad you brought up feedback, because that was literally going to be my next question. Was when we'll focus on founder and then investor. What has been some of the most impactful feedback that you've gotten from a founder that made you think, I'm on the right track or I have to pivot here?
So, I mean, the best feedback to me is kind of always from, I'm always the most excited, from the founders, because that's who I have in mind when I'm building this, is how can I create a space that's supporting founders that are building startups. And it's like almost every meetup, someone comes up to me and says, hey, thank you so much for building this. This has been incredible. I've been looking for a space where I can connect with other founders, that I can hear from more experienced founders on stage and get advice and, oxygenate my ideas. Like, they're heads down in their company, right? So at times, even being able to ask a question about fundraising or about securing clients or the growth of the company, leadership, to be able to have those people on stage to be able to ask questions, I think is really valuable to them. So yeah, I've gotten a ton of good feedback in regards to the value it's provided for founders, for sure.
I love the founder focus, and I focus on founders and working with founders, primarily. And, something I say to them frequently is that the beauty is in the basics. When they get their blinders on and they're working so deep into some small part of what they're doing, they get so blinded to everything else around them that they forget how the easy stuff actually makes things move forward faster.
For sure.
And so when the beauty's in the basics and you take off your blinders and you can take a look at the full picture again, and you're no longer just like honed in on something, you meet someone else, take a breath of fresh air, walk away from your computer for touch grass, So
let me ask you, since you've been to the Tech Meetup since we were at the Fitz bar, you've seen us host at the Flow Building, you've seen us host now at the Levan Center. How has it been for you? How have you perceived the growth of the community and how it's changed?
What I think is one of the best parts for me was the consistent connections, right? And the quality of the audience, which is incredible. Like, you talk about the quality of the guests, which is, that's kind of like table stakes. We have to have that. But then when you look at the quality of the audience and you go through and you meet 10 to 14 to 20 people, and every conversation you have is interesting and on topic, and they're not also self-centered. They want to learn about you too. Like everyone has that moment where they're like, okay, I should shut up and listen. And then, oh no, I should shut up and listen. Right. And it's kind of like that back and forth. And it's exciting because there's no one you meet where it's like, oh, okay. It's always, oh, okay. Like that's cool. That's valuable. Like that's interesting. Good luck. I want to follow your journey. Right.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not interested, it's still like, I want to see how this turns out, especially on the founder side. And then investors, it's always just like, what's your thesis? What are you investing in? They always have their mission, their goal. They're very busy, and it's like,
right.
They don't want to waste time. So it's fun to talk to them and tell them where I fit into this giant puzzle. And if it's a piece that they need, then perfect. If not,
You're like, do you need a master connector? I'm your person.
Master connector, Excel wizard who, is good in front of a microphone and can also do your financial modeling. Like that's
No, there's so many cool people that come, and I can't like fully keep track, because I'm usually running around. I'm excited for next month because you're going to host the interview on stage, so I get to actually like just hang back a little bit.
Take off the blinders.
Exactly. Take off the blinders and have like more conversations with people around. But yeah, sometimes I look back at like the pictures or some of the video clips. I'm like, man, there were so many cool people here. And, it's on one side, I'm like, oh, I really wish like I had more time to know more about who all these people are. But on the other hand, I'm like, yes, like we're doing it, And I think one thing that would be cool to talk about, Fritz, is a little bit about like the culture, which you touched a little bit on, because Broward is different from Miami.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There's a little bit of a different vibe up here. And how do you see the difference?
It is like traveling to a different country in many ways, because there's such a diverse population in all three counties that it's almost like, and I'm lucky because my wife's Venezuelan, and so I like got to experience an entire culture as if I was like a baby over again. I got to learn Spanish. I got to learn the cultural isms and eat food that I've never eaten before and experience things that I would never experience if I did not live in South Florida. And that's a luxury afforded to only us, I think. And there's other communities around the states that have that, but you bringing that all into one room, and I meet people from all over the place, not the states, even internationally, and it's such a melting pot, and it's such a cliche word, but it's like it's real. Like we could go to 6 different restaurants today and have 6 different cultures. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of people moving here too. Still,
yeah. Hopefully they stop. So. They feel free to stay where you guys are. I don't know where you're listening from, but Florida's full.
Yeah.
We're full. I cannot drive anywhere, but yeah, that's another task is, how do we fix the infrastructure of Florida to make something like
we move further north? That's what we do.
But I don't want to. No one wants to. And
we already do, you and I. So
I know.
But we could go further.
Yeah, it's tough. It's going to be a big thing for Florida. I'm excited for Florida's growth. I want to see a lot of investment from the state into our region, both for founders. Like there's so much that other states do that we don't.
Yeah.
And I think there's huge groups here. Emerge, Florida Venture, deep work with the Florida Opportunity Fund. There's like small inklings of what the future is kind of going to have for us. And I hope it just blows it out of the water.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Broward County and Palm Beach growing a lot. Because I think Miami is so densely packed, and I think folks want a little bit more space and a little bit more tranquility. Not that Miami's bad, it's great, but I do see that already happening. Like it just kind of spacing out more, and I think that there's going to be a tremendous benefit to that. I think the counties will actually be more connected if more people are from the tech community are kind of spreading out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to like adjust your entire mentality around the logistics of being down here, because when you make a plan to be somewhere, you should plan to be there like the entire day.
Yeah, but that's where like co-working spaces are so helpful. Yes. Like you have the lab in Wynwood. You have the Levan Center here. You have General Provision downtown Fort Lauderdale, 1909 in West Palm. I mean, like there's spaces that you can go to spend the day while you're visiting and still be able to work and be comfortable.
I love that you bring up the co-working space because we're literally in one right now.
I love that.
This is where we come to meet and we get stuff done, and there's so many more like Manatech and so many others that are like, okay, the communities are here now. We're building the infrastructure around them. The people are like growing it, and it's like I just love seeing that. And I want to end with kind of circling back to what do you love about what's coming next for you? Like what's the next steps for Julia and the meetup?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet, like what's next. I think that I cast a big vision for what we're building and executing on now. And I'm really happy with how much we've progressed so far. I don't have the ambition to like multiply the tech meetups into multiple, dozens of meetups. Like I'm happy having one and being really connected with the community. I would love for us to maybe find a partner that we could grow alongside more strategically. And I don't know what that will look like for the future, but it's definitely something that I kind of have my ears out and I'm kind of attentive to, just because the tech meetup has grown so much and it continues to grow so much. Every month we have 50% new people in our events. And I personally don't have the ambition, like I said, to scale it by myself. So if we did have, a strategic partnership in there that would support more of what the tech meetup can grow into, I think that that's something I would be really excited about, but still kind of figuring that out. I'm really throwing something out kind of still raw, but it's what I kind of sense coming. Maybe we'll see.
Well, I hope regardless, I hope that other communities around really pick up your torch and build what you're trying to build here. And
is that you?
I think that's me. I don't know. So yeah, I want to thank you so much for being episode number 1. This is incredible. The first of many. And this is a very meaningful thing to have you on here and be like the precipice of what On the Fritz is going to stand for. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. Super excited about what you're building and you can count on me.
Always, always. Well, thanks again. And please tell our audience where and best to find you.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at FTL Tech Meetup. And that's our handle on Instagram. And on LinkedIn, I'm Julia Lucidi. And Founder Tactics Podcast with Julia is available on all streaming platforms.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this conversation and you hung around to this point, I invite you to put your fist through the like button. Don't forget to voice your own opinions in the comments. I welcome feedback. You can find more episodes like this on all the platforms that we have: YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music. Feel free to connect. I'm Fritz Spencer. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of On the Fritz.